the beauty of all of this is you're not replacing any of that human talent that is standing right there on the floor. What you're doing is you're augmenting that human talent with the ability to personalize information and insight directly to the customer and get them to make more enjoyable and fruitful decisions. And it allows the associate to focus on building a better relationship with the customer versus, trying to hunt down information and answer questions.
Our guest today is Girish Bettadpur, Director of GenAI Visual Media at Amazon. 20 years in enterprise software, the last several in retail, building the AI infrastructure behind Amazon's visual content engine. 15 million pieces of content every single day, which makes him the most interesting person to have in this conversation. Girish, welcome to InStore.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to both you and Akash about all the great things that are happening in our space, especially in the Gen AI space. This is going to be a fun conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. So this feature in Amazon in the app right now, second slot on the clothing product page, it's called Style It On You. You take a full body picture and then the item appears on you in the app. So
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Could you walk us through what problem that's solving? And then maybe if it makes sense, you could also think of it in the in-store context and
Sure.
connect those two things.
Sure. And something for your listeners, they should give it a try. It's available in the Amazon mobile app, especially if you're here in the US, you should be able to try it today. So if you go there, it's a nice little purple button, says Style It On You. Give it a try. And send us some feedback on what you think about it. So going to your question, Troy, what problem are we trying to solve here? So the first one is pretty obvious. We are trying to close the imagination gap for our customer between the product that is shown on the site versus what they see on themselves. They don't have to imagine what the product will look like on themselves when they're trying to see it on a size zero model, right? They can get to see it on their own specific body and make decisions. The less obvious one here is that the signals that we get from this, right? There's an intent signal that we are trying to intercept here and trying to feed into that intent signal for the customer. So when they make an effort to give us their full body picture, they are making an effort. They're going that one level extra to try something on. And that tells us something about the intent.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem here, which like any other tech product, right? This is a software usage effort that you're making as a customer versus trying on clothes like you do in physical retail. So there's some difference there. There's some level of self-selection, but even so, we can collect enough learnings from these types of experiences that we can improve them in the future for everybody. Now in physical retail, when somebody tries on, and they try on almost all the time, you're almost certain that that person is going to buy that product. The problem is it's very hard to capture that intent signal at that point in time. And even if you could capture the signal, it's very hard to personalize the response back to that customer and give them interesting ideas on what to pair with that piece of clothing, whether it's a pair of pants with shirts or accessories or things like that. It's very hard to do that in physical retail, right? And this is an age-old problem. Retailers have struggled with this for a very long time. Um, Collecting signals was very expensive. You either had to put humans in those spots to collect those signals, or you'd have to instrument your entire store with sensors and cameras and things like that. So very expensive. And even if you did collect the signal, coming back with a good response in real time was very hard. And you just did not have enough content to be able to respond to that signal either, right? And all of those challenges somehow went away in one shot. So all those three constraints just went away in one fine day, right? That's what has happened. So you now have cell phones in every pocket, and they can just scan a QR code, and now you're collecting data. And you can build AI agents that can react to that data in real time. And you have the capability with Gen AI in the backend to personalize content in all kinds of interesting ways. So imagine you having a customer scan a QR code just to get a fitting room key. And from there on out, the agent just takes over. It can signal the associate on the floor to say, hey, this customer in room number 3 needs a different size or they need a different color. Just bring it to them. So you have a concierge service happening right there. You could take a full body picture of you wearing that piece of clothing and upload it to the agent, and it can say, you know what'll go nice with that? A belt that we have on such and such rack, or that bag that is sitting over there on that rack, or something like that. So you can make that whole process be personalized to that particular customer and what they are trying to do at that point in time. And this is not just limited to clothing, right? This can go to any retail category. And the beauty of all of this is you're not replacing any of that human talent that is standing right there on the floor. What you're doing is you're augmenting that human talent with the ability to personalize information and insight directly to the customer and get them to make more enjoyable and fruitful decisions. And it allows the associate to focus on building a better relationship with the customer versus, trying to hunt down information and answer questions.
Yeah, that you're playing our music. So Akash has spent a lot of time and money trying to get those. We have the bones, a lot of the bones of what you just said in the retail store, right? Like, so there's sensing equipment, there's RFID, there's cameras and all that. And then tying in that Gen AI thing is, I won't say it's the last piece, but it's a big unlock. Getting that agent that you were talking about to help the store associate or help the customer in the changing room, that's where we're spending a lot of our discussions, right, Akash?
Yeah, and I think there are aspects of feedback as well. For example, let's say somebody tries something in a fitting room. If it doesn't fit very well, they just reject it, right? You don't get any
That's right.
feedback really from the
Exactly.
from the customer. I think as we have been kind of researching more around this, we also feel that voice is going to play a pretty critical role here. I'm pretty sure if somebody's trying something in fitting room and it doesn't work well for them, they're open to kind of giving you very quick feedback on voice, right? Saying this is what it doesn't, the shoulders are hanging or whatever, right? So I think the whole aspect of LLM agent that can kind of work with them to figure this out is definitely gonna be pretty interesting. And I think, Troy, we talked about this in one of our other episode as well, about when people come to return things, right? And I spend enough time in store at some point of time, and actually, when people were coming to return things in store, they were telling you why they were returning. It's just that there wasn't ever a good way of capturing it, right?
That's right.
Which is same in fitting room and likes of that. So I think a good use of large language models and NLP and all of that has matured over last couple of years is being able to have a good conversation with the customer, right? That can
You're
capture all of it.
you're absolutely right. Just sticking to that example that you just gave, right? Where the agent can really help is that when you upload a picture of yourself wearing that piece of clothing, whether it's loose or tight or just not right, it's very hard for the human to express why it is not right. Whereas the agent, with its world knowledge, it knows how to put it in terms that the brand will understand.
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
Right? It can give very specific instructions back to the brand to say, hey, this is what is happening. When 30% of the people who are rejecting this particular dress or pair of pants or shirt or whatever it is, this is what seems to be wrong here. And I can see all of this based on the photos that are being uploaded, not based on somebody's opinion about what is happening. Although that can be added information on top of it as well. So those are the kinds of interesting
Yeah,
things that
yeah.
you could now do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think given that a lot of this has become multimodal, so you can really convert a picture into a text and video into a text and voice into a text and feed that into one single model today is of course phenomenal. I think if we were to try and do it a couple of years back, it would be a nightmare. But today, taking a video feed, taking a text, and taking an image and taking a voice, and converging all of them in information that can be leveraged by the brand is a reality, and I think that's gonna start helping a lot in some of these environments.
That's exactly right. And hopefully that helps with, I know that especially in fashion, waste is a big
Mhm.
problem. And this hopefully this is the type of information that might help them reduce that kind of waste at the point of manufacturing.
Hmm.
But yeah, absolutely, you're bang on there. That 2 years ago this wouldn't have been possible, but the speed at which things are changing right now in this space, it's amazing. Just a few months ago, the kind of outputs that we were being able to create versus the outputs that we create today, we were getting pass rates. We are improving pass rates for the outputs by orders of magnitude with every single release. It is just amazing.
With that in mind, Girish, so all these retailers are in a hurry to adopt Gen AI. Where do you see the biggest risks if they say prioritize speed over accuracy?
That's an interesting question. So here's what I would. It's not a question of risks. I think the way they should be thinking about adopting Gen AI, they absolutely should be focusing on speed when it comes to adopting these tools.
Interesting.
Um, the the risks, the guardrails that they should have in mind, is that accuracy matters a lot, especially when you're talking directly to the customer, and the especially the product representation. You don't want to make mistakes in product representation. But if you make small mistakes in, let's say, representing other aspects of that content, whether it's visual or text or whatever, if you make minor mistakes in the contextual data, that's okay. Don't focus too much on that. You don't want to be 100% accurate on every single dimension. But if the product is being represented correctly, then you're gold. Then keep going down that path. The thing they should do, though, is they should experiment more frequently, and they should experiment at volume to collect data and to make sure that they're improving the experience at the same speed that the technology is just moving right now.
That makes sense. And you talk a lot about trust and authenticity, right? Like in this context of Gen AI, what are you getting at when you go into those depths on those topics?
So when you think about authenticity, right? So like I was saying, there can be a few mistakes that you make in representing what the customer is looking for. Let's say, for example, we go back to that example of you taking a picture of yourself, seeing the
Hmm.
clothing on you, so on and so forth. There might be some minor mistakes I'll make. The hair might be different. Maybe I'll show a tattoo here or there. Those are the kinds of things that you can ignore. That is not what erodes trust. But if, let's say, this is the sweater that I'm trying to evaluate, and instead of the sweater, you show me something else, or you show me that the you crop off the sleeves on the sweater, or you show me a completely different color than what I was trying to evaluate. Those are the kinds of things that'll start to erode trust um, for the customer. What they want to see is that you understand what they were trying to try. The context is well represented in the output, um, but they will excuse minor mistakes that sit on the fringes.
Makes sense. So, Akash, you and I talk all the time about bridging that gap between the online experience and the physical experience. And Girish was just talking about all, like, I mean, it was kind of our dream of like all this data that they have in the online world coming together in the physical store. But where is anybody doing this yet with Gen AI in the stores? Like, where do you see this evolving in this year or in the future years?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's actually both ways. There's so much online data that kind of is completely missing how physical world operates. Almost on hour-to-hour basis. And then there's bunch of actually physical interaction data that really is missing from the online world as well, right? if somebody spend n hours in the store kind of interacting with certain set of product, I think that data is gold for online as well, right? Because that gives a pretty different view on what that buyer consumer is looking for, and likes of that, right? The true intersection of Troy, we keep talking about the omni profile of a person, right?
Mhm.
An omni profile of a community, right? All of these things are starting to kind of come together from overall perspective. Of course, I think there are aspects of privacy that need to be figured out, and all of that. But the good thing is that Gen AI and LLM is giving you tools to kind of bring that together, right? And then that needs to be kind of aligned with privacy. That needs to be aligned with how the sensitive data is being leveraged and used, and likes of that. But is the base technology there? Yes, I think there is a bunch of base technology that can help you to form omni profiles of a person, of a community, of a zip code that can allow brands to take far better decisions to kind of optimize their omni sales, right? And I think there are now enough experiments that have done. I think we did that experiment with one of our customers where you shut down a store and the e-commerce sales of that zip code kind of goes down, right? So I think there have been enough real experiments done now that clearly talks about that your sales of both the channels, e-com and retail, are pretty kind of connected to each other, especially because there's so much digital advertisement out there that brand recall using digital advertisement is very, very hard these days. I think all of our we make sure that YouTube doesn't have ads, and we've gone to the point where people who have spending power, they've pretty much blocked all kind of digital advertisements that can come to them. And when you physically pass through a store and look at a brand, I think that has a very strong trigger to different things. So I think there is definitely now enough technology, I would say, available to bring that omni view all across. But I think there's still some work needs to be done to productize it, both in collaboration with technology and providers and retailers. I think there's still some work that is needed to kind of bring that in production form, but the technology has evolved to that.
Yeah, and there are two aspects to what you just said, which is very right. One was, up until now, it was really hard for the retailer to collect all of that data and make sense of it from the physical space and bring it in some kind of either structured or unstructured manner that you could then analyze and make some sense out of, right? Because if everything had to be relayed back by associates, you're adding
Yeah, yeah,
more work on their plates that they're not skilled enough to do at that point in time. So now, if you can collect data more easily, that creates some level of understanding of the customer that you can then leverage to make better decisions, both to improve the store experience, but also the products that you're putting in front of the customer. That is the main thing, is that they can now collect the data and they have all of the tools necessary to be able to analyze and change the experience meaningfully for that particular customer in store.
So when we tie all these things, these possibilities in the in-store environment to what, say, Amazon's doing in the online environment. So if you think of virtual try-on, immersive visuals, AI-assisted shopping in the store, um, one of the things that always kind of comes to my mind is, in each brand's customers are different, but how do you not overwhelm the customer? There's so much data you can kind of provide them or queue up to them, but how do you let them enjoy that physical experience, but also get that help that you were talking about?
That's right. That's right. So think about a scenario, an in-store scenario, where let's say you're shopping for a technology product. Let's say it is a pair of headphones, and you are an audiophile and you have all these different types of questions that you ask before you buy those pair of headphones or something like that, or you're buying, a piece of jewelry for your significant other, and you're asking all kinds of questions about the precious metal and how it is set and all of those kinds of things. Now, you could have two types of salespeople, sales associates at the point of sale, that are giving you information. One that might just give you a data dump, or one that might relate that back to you in a way that you can connect to why you're trying to buy that product in the first place, and what is important to you. What are the answers you're really looking for, to be able to make a decision, right? The better salespeople will ask you some of those key questions up front so that the context is right, and then they know how to relay information within that context. But to maintain that consistently is very hard, because humans naturally vary in terms of their skill levels, and over time they get better at certain things versus others, and so on and so forth. Whereas with AI agents, you can make that experience be consistent. You can set the right guardrails, you can give it the right persona, if you may, so that it knows how to infer things from the context provided to it. And then it can infer intent, it can infer what are the attributes for decision making, and then go down a certain path where it only gives you information that you need to see at that point in time. And not that it hides the other information, it keeps it behind a curtain where it says, hey, behind that curtain, I have more information if you need it. But here's what you really want to know, I think.
And Akash, where
Yeah.
so you're experimenting with merchandising. A lot of what we're talking about is like marketing and customer experience side, but this kind of ties in a little bit with this Gen AI and merchandising, right?
Yeah. I think customer assistance is always something that needs to be pretty balanced. I still feel that on-demand assistance, which has enough awareness, is pretty good. At the end of the day, if I'm pretty sure it's every retailer's dream that if they can train all associates in one single way, and they can give one single experience and likes of that. I think how do you basically leverage technology to do that is pretty much the name of the game here. How do you leverage LLM, Gen AI, and being able to consume this multimodal data set to give that kind of experience? And I think it's all going to happen through a combination of human and AI. I think maybe in next century it would change, but I think over the next few years, I think it's still gonna be pretty collaborative between human and AI. So I think it's all about how do you leverage AI to make sure that you can get to that dream state with every associate, right? And I know this is a little controversial, but at least in my mind, we have been playing with this idea of 2 plus 10, right? So two store associates have 10 digital store associates, right? And then it's like, it's a team, right? It's a team of two store associates and 10 digital store associates managing a customer experience, right? And so I think this is at least where I can see puck moving towards, where you have like this 2 plus 10 setup, right? And that 2 plus 10 can give a amazing experience, to every customer, coming in, and a lot of it is on demand. Like you basically push a certain information and then wait for the customer coming in to ask for more or likes of that. Because one thing we know that if a customer is asking for help, right, then the intent is super strong, right? And if you can give the right experience at that point of time, right? Like if you look at the overall journey of the whole buying journey, there are two or three places actually where the buying intent is very, very strong, right? When they are asking for help, asking for a different size, asking for a different color, asking for a recommendation. I think there are certain points where buying intent is extremely high. Today, I don't think we do justice to give the right experience at that particular buying intent, right? I know, Girish, from Amazon perspective, the buy now button, that was so amazing, right?
Yeah,
That really worked because you caught the person when the buy intent was so high that you could just give a button and it all goes up, right? So
that's
I
right.
think similarly in the store, when a user is coming in and asking for help, I think you have very significant buying intent. The experience you give that person when that is high really, really kind of gets you to the right conversion rates. And I'm hoping that technology, people, and intent of the retailer will all come together to kind of give that dream experience to the consumer, including me when I go to a store.
I like that 2 plus 10 framing. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
So I don't know how this works. And so the science of what we're talking about here is moving like at incredible speeds, right? And then in store, I've been mostly on the store, physical store side of this. I've done a lot of ecom too, but in the in store processes and things that happen within a brand's like store ecosystem, there's a lot of art, not science to that.
Mm,
The way you figure this out is you go into the store like Akash you did, right? And you learn things. They're not in the manuals, they're not in the scripts. And so I'm just wondering how the Gen AI will figure that out, Girish. Like how do you see that store, I don't know, that essence of that store manager that's been there for 2 years and they just know stuff, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
how do you get that into the Gen AI is interesting to me.
Yeah, what's that age old Procter and Gamble thing where they went and stood next to the store and they kept recording what people were buying, and that's how they decided beer and diapers go together or something like that. Um, yeah, but that's the magic of some of those really forward-thinking individuals who collected data and made good decisions, right? The problem right now is you're always looking for a needle in a stack of needles.
Yeah.
And going back to what you were saying in terms of getting that expert input to make the agent become better over time. There's a process for it today, right? In all of the modeling that happens, you always take paired data and you pass it through a pair of expert human eyes, whether those and they evaluate on your behalf and they annotate the information back for you and say, hey, this is where it could have been better or not better, so on and so forth. Even in the regular conversational agents that you use, there's always the thumbs up, thumbs down, and you can give it feedback in terms of what it is doing well or not doing well. The key will be, how do you scale this over time, right? How do you mechanize that process so that when you continuously raise the bar for the average, right? Let's say your agent on day one is better than 90% of the people, 90% of your associates. That's where you start with your average. But your 10% are so much better than the agent, that how do you take that skill and you bake it back into the agent, right? So that it becomes incrementally, it just keeps getting better. And that's the process that we need to mechanize over time.
Yeah. I think on this perspective, I truly believe uh, solving this through store and warehouse world models, and I've kind of talked about this bunch of times. I think there is significant value in training models that understand true physical behavior of these things, right? Unfortunately, the physical behavior of things cannot be enough captured through YouTube data, and hence will have to be captured in so many different ways. Like, there are tons of sensory data that will have to kind of all, be consumed to do that. But I think there is good work going on across the industry to start understanding how do you digitize the physical world interaction into world models. I think we are attempting to train our store and warehouse world models, which can basically take a certain state of a particular store and say that if you do these set of actions, what would be the end state, right?
Yeah.
Or if you have a state of a particular store and you want to get to another state, what actions are required to get to that state? So I think there is pretty good work, and this is still at, I would say, somewhere between science and product. That is the work that is happening, but I think that's where a lifelong trained world models would start kind of taking place, which would truly understand the physical space and its intricacies and how people behave with it and likes of that. And so yeah, I think that's how I believe this will all evolve. And then I think there can be agents sitting on the top of world model, learning from it, and kind of helping associates and consumers and likes of that. So I think still, as I said, still in somewhere mid of science and production, but yes, I think that's how I would imagine this going forward.
The beauty is the mechanisms for all of this already exist. We know how to collect this data, how to synthesize it, and how to retrain the models and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of it is already happening as well. So it's only a matter of time. The I think if you're a product manager, you're just champing at the bit right now, just waiting for some of these kinds of features to become available to you so that you can, you know, build better features, and you can express your creativity, and make them come to life much sooner, much faster than ever before.
Girish, this is a conversation that I knew was going to be awesome when we first met you, but it was even better than I expected. I wanted to just kind of give you the floor for a second, if you want. For those of us that are just hearing from you for the first time, or some of the listeners want to know, how do they stay in your orbit? Where do they find you, or what's next? What's next for Girish?
Yeah, I'm pretty responsive on LinkedIn if folks want to connect with me, and if they ever want to have a chat about anything informally, happy to do so. Um, I'm starting to think about what's next in my chapter here, my career. I'm helping my wife scale up her ice cream brand that she recently launched. It's called Ticket Ice Cream, and the entire thesis there is that. Ticket goes and finds rare fruits and desserts from around the world, and it reimagines them as ice cream. So, this is apropos to our conversation, bringing things into the physical world. And GenAI has helped quite a bit in terms of how they thought about the naming and the branding and things like that. But human experts, were involved all along the way, and they continue to help shape how this brand will come to the customer.
Wow, that is huge. That's a big jump. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, then best of luck to you and your wife, and maybe we could have you on and see how that's going. That enterprise is going someday in the future. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Maybe with a cup of joy in our hands and tasting that ice cream as well.
yes, awesome. Thank you so much for being on In Store, Girish.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was fun. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.